Hello, everyone. It's the history show. It's the music show. It's got two great guests on, as usual. I've got Derek on, Derek Shelmerdine, who knows everything about everything. And he's wrote a book. Do you know what? It's here somewhere. And I can't get up to get it. There's my library over there, you see. And if you see my library, I can't find anything. But it's not there. And it's Merseyside unravelled, the music scene that is. And I'm going to talk about that to Derek. To be honest, I hope he's got a copy there of his whole book, to show. Honest to God, I can't find this thing here, which I have of Derek, which is good. Anyway, stay with me as well because I've been asked a few questions about history and I'll have to answer them. I really will have to answer them because people have sent me private messages. Not only that, but also during the break, if you've got Irish blood in you, have a look at what I've put up. Oh, not me, but Jason's put up. And it'll be very interesting to you as well. Okay. But one of the questions, this is what we're putting it up. They asked me about the Irish influx of 1847. So I'll just use a snippet of that. I'll just use a snippet of that, and then you'll be able to see the clip at half time, and then we'll have Derek back on again. Right? I'm talking about his music. So I hope he's got his book there. I really do. So anyway, I'm going to bring on the guest every week. He's one of these lovely fellas. Honestly, he's very quiet, and he likes to drop a scotch, by the way. and he's an international artist. I've got to say this again. Honestly, he's the only artist in the entire world that's had 100 portraits in one session to view, the only one in the world. And you go in and you start looking at these unbelievable portraits of people who have given so much to Liverpool. Not he hasn't only done that, he's done fantastic work, even drawings, he's done all that. Anyway, that's Anthony Brown, me mate. Anyway, and the great, honestly, Derek Shelmerdine, what a lad. He knows every. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh, I've got to mention this fella here. GW, even Frank thought I'd pop in. GW, what a man. This lad, I have to tell you, honestly, we go on streams, we go on the alternative news, we really do. And this lad, DW, we have a little, we don't have a chat, we just say hello to, show respect. And, this is what we do, and we show respect. Isn't that lovely? Thank you. Listen, DW, subscribe to the channel because I want the algorithm out there, please. Thank you so much. Made up to see you, mate. I'm made up. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'll just go through these. I can't bloody use this bloody thing, Right, Darryl Merry. DW, made up. Thank you. Even if Frankie, Anthony, and Derek, hope you're all well. Thank you. And he always does this, doesn't he? Frankie and Gary Rigby. Evening, everyone. Evening, Gary. Gary, did you say you'd love to go to that nuke, up in Greenland? Let me know. Just let me know, okay, if you'd like to go to nuke. Just let me know. Evening, Gary, mate, isn't that lovely? And they're all saying hello to one another, which is fabulous. Oh, that's amazing. That he's up. He's up. Unbelievable. He's a cracking lad. Even if Frank, says Lynn Ellis. Thank you, Lynn. Love you. Thank you. And I'll be doing a couple of tours this year as the weather breaks, you know, not in the cold. Hate the cold, as you can see, because I've got this bloody thing on. And if you want to go along, Lynn does these coaches. She does two a year, and we go everywhere on them, all around Liverpool. So, and it's great. Everybody loves them. I'm not just saying that. And she hires me, you know, not to drive, And she hires me to, you know, to guide you, to say, look at that. Have you ever seen that before? And everyone goes, oh, no. Why have I missed that? Because you haven't looked, that's why. But anyway, you know, that's what she'll be doing during the summer. I advise you to come along. It doesn't cost much. Then everybody gives me 50 quid for it. Oh, it's totally joking. I'm only joking. It's a lot. It's brilliant. Listen to that. DW. Hey, man. DW. Great. Hey, look. You're welcome. I did subscribe, Frank. I asked for an alert as well, but it didn't arrive. Did you? I don't know why it hadn't. I'm sorry, Daisy. But I do podcasts, you know, this is the history one. I do a TV and film review as well on a Thursday morning. But I think that'll be too early for you. If you ever want to come on, you know, DW, on my film and TV review, if you're into films and if you're into TV series, let me know and I'll get you on. There's no problem with that. And you can talk about them, what kind of genre of films and TV you like. Series, that is. I don't mean soap operas, if you know what I mean. And I'm feeling raw. Look at him. Even in Frank, look at all the cup. Scotches. Pints. Frank and me berries. Ah, great. Let's see, even in Derek and Anthony. I'm sorry there, lads. I'm going to have you on. Just let me, please. Oh, yeah, I would, Frank. Nuke is on the list. I'm a big traveller. Gary, you'll have to get in touch with me, okay? Get in touch with me. Please get in touch with me. Somehow. Lena, anyone who goes on the tour, tours, love them. And you, Frank, thank you. They love me. Always fantastic taste. Thank you, Lynn. And Steve Mulholland, now DW, if you know, I mean, Steve Mulholland, that lad is one of us. DW is one of us. And he's just come on there to pop in. He's a cracking lad, believe you me. He's one of us, Steve. It wasn't long ago that Liverpool fans on the social media screaming about Klopp signing no midfielders. Chelsea spent 120 on one player and he bottled it yesterday. I was one of them, to be honest, because I've been screaming out for midfielders for 3 years, for 3 seasons, to be honest, Stephen. But this is not a football show. This isn't. And as Lynn says, fantastic, you know, fantastic. And I'm feeling raw. Frankie loves his bevies. How about that cup, lads? Made up. And DW says the alerts on YouTube, the alerts are YouTube's fault, Frank. They delay alerts and some. I'll tell you what else they do. And there's been loads of complaints as well. YouTube unsubscribe people. And then I have to ask people to subscribe again. It's just absolutely nuts. It really is. Someone said that they actually do that for their own algorithm. That's what they do. It's just It's just, oh, Gary Richards. But that's what they do, TW and everybody else out there. You know, you've got to subscribe all the time for some reason. Tally ho, Frank, dear boy. Title next lap. Yes. Oh, brilliant. I love films, Frank. I'd consider that. We go out at 10:30 every Thursday morning. Sometimes I leave it till a Saturday, but I'll be doing it this Thursday. If you're interested, if you're on Facebook, send me a message with your email, because the producer of this show, Jason Perrington, he produces every show and we send it out to you, just like my lovely guest who I have on now. Oh, brilliant. I will, Frank. I want to go to, I'm not going there as well. I'm looking forward. I'm looking at May or June. That's good. Let me know anyway. We'll have a chat. We'll have a chat. Bads with footy, like, was always late to be picked for the PE. Don't worry about the footy. It'll be made up. If you like history, stay with us. TW, and if you're there, you know, the film and TV reviews, I'll definitely have you on this Thursday morning. Definitely. Okay. And never heard that, but I can believe it, mate. No, it's true about YouTube unsubscribing people. And Gary says, Frank, have you ever heard the Bat poem by the Liverpool City? Yeah, I have. And I poetry myself, you know. But you didn't know that, did you? You didn't know that. Yeah. I'm a little poet. A little poet. And some girl, I had a little girl on named Abby, smashing singer. And she came along with her mum and dad, you know, to the studio. And she was sitting in, and you see her on the, you know, where, you know, the introduction to the show, and you see all of the happy faces with me, you know. That's poor Jake Abraham, you see him. Michael Stark, you see him with me. Billy Butler, you see him, and Leslie Butler. You know, so you see that, and you see that little girl. Well, you know, big girl now. And she's playing a guitar, and what am I talking about here? I haven't a clue what I'm talking about here. But anyway, but then, I don't know. I've lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. I'm excited. I'm excited for this. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I like poetry. Oh, and the girl said to me, can I read a poem out on the show when she was there, and she said, can I use that as a song? And I said, yeah. I haven't seen her since. I'm going to send one to, I'll send it to Derek, actually, and see what he can, see if he can, like, say, you know, does anyone want this as a song? I wonder if he might tell me to, I want something off. Seems over there. Hi, mate, I'm doing a bit of reading about the history of Sunderland, my own, nice one. I could tell you something about a lad from Newcastle, very posh lad, by the way, and what we'd seen in the Dordogne of France. And it was unbelievable. It really was. And Gary says, I love the Billy Butler show. Shame he's retired now. Yes. And Gary, the DW, yes, he did. He came to see his sister and his half brother Wilhelm to Liverpool in 1920, and what he couldn't get over, I don't know whether our lads know this, you know, Derek or Anthony, but he gets on the overhead railway and he's travelling along, but what he's observing a few things. He was a great observationist, was Adolf Hitler. Anyway, he was observing the docks. Now, this is 1920. This is, it's even less than 2 years after the war. You know, well, 2 years less than. And and he couldn't get over the amount of ships, and I'm talking about big cargo ships coming into the port, and we've got 7.5 miles of docks here, and he couldn't believe the amount of food that was coming into Liverpool. And because back home in Germany, through the armistice, and America, it flooding Germany with the dollar, the Deutschmark. You know, it wasn't called the Deutschmark then, but the Deutschmark nevertheless wasn't worth a penny. It wasn't worth a penny. You had to have the dollar. This is how geopolitics work, and this is how America works. And anyway, the shops were empty. No one could buy anything. It was absolutely. Goes to his sister. She opens. What do you want, a sandwich or something? Yeah, whatever. Opens the larder full of food. And he said, "Do you realise what's in that little cupboard of yours? There's more than in the shops back at home." That's what he said. Then he went to the Adelphi Hotel whereas I'm getting all messages here. I'm sorry there. I really am. So DW, yes, he did. He was here. And that's how the Liver building, our Liver building, that is, the Port of Liverpool building and the Cunard building was left during the May Blitz because they were a landmark for the Germans to get back home. The Luftwaffe, that is. And Frank, they have just uncovered the back of Walton Cemetery, 1,300 tombs that were taken from the church in St. Peter's. Yeah, I've just posted up a video about it. Check it out. I was working not far from where I live, not far from here, by the way, and they were digging the foundations for something. We were all looking over, and they blacked it off with all this black sheeting, very high, so pedestrians couldn't see it. And what it was, they found 2,000 bodies interred, and they were the Irish after they came over in 1847. They have famine-related diseases. I'm going to bring in, and I'm sorry, DW, first class history lesson, Frank. Thanks. Thank you, DW. Made up. Hope to see you Thursday, my mate. And he grew a little moustache because he saw how popular Charlie Chaplin was. I'm not making this up. See what you learn on this show. And Charlie Chaplin went to St. SFX here in Liverpool. It's a university now, and that's where I used to lecture, in Salisbury Street, well, Shaw Street. Incredible, isn't it? How small world it is. Charlie Chaplin. Anyway, I'm going to bring my fabulous guests on, and there he is. There he is, Anthony. I'm sorry to keep you waiting, Anthony. I really am.
Do not apologise, Frank. I have enjoyed the history lesson. It's been great watching the guys contribute. Fantastic.
CGW, you know, I'm made up to see him. Absolutely. And he asked the question. I have to answer them, you see. And there's my mate here. Oh, look at this. Derek, I'm sorry. I have to apologise because I hope you forgive me.
No problem. I've been really enjoying listening to the stories, mate. Fascinating. I never knew Hitler actually popped over to Liverpool.
Yeah, he was here. You know, he visited his sister Eloise and his half brother Wilhelm.
Yeah,
Wilhelm, and he worked in the Adelphi Hotel, so we went there to the Adelphi.
Incredible.
I was. Could you imagine Wilhelm going, all right, lads, how are you? Long time no see, where have you been? Oh, bloody hell, you know, Oh, great. TW says, welcome, Anthony. And evening, Derek. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, hi.
Lovely. I just want to show one picture. And look at this picture. Jagen. I didn't even know you'd done that, you know.
A few years ago.
God, I didn't even know that you did that.
Well, it was supposed to be a secret for a while. It
was it?
For him. Yeah, there's massive American New York fan club for Liverpool. There is all over the world, but New York Copites in Gallagher's Bar in New York near Central Park, and they commissioned me to paint Jagen for them to give to Jagen as a gift a few years ago, just before COVID.
Wow.
Just before COVID hit, and then that shut down.
That's fantastic. I didn't even know that.
So it's never been seen, and it should never been seen. And anyone who sees it has got to be obviously put in a dark room for 25 years and not mention its existence. So thanks, Frank.
No, I think that's absolutely amazing. I really do. I really do. I'm not just saying that, by the way. I'm not just saying that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll have to talk to this great man. And Derek, you know, you haven't got that book with you, have you?
Funny you should say that. Here's one I made earlier. It's
look at that, honestly.
It's not a start the beginning, read to the end. It's very much a dip in.
Dip out. You can get in anything. Yeah. People, if you like your music, honestly, get onto this. And there it is underneath his name there, Derek Shelmerdine's Rock and Roll Unraveled. I
have enjoyed for the past few days following it on your Facebook page for it, Derek.
Oh, right.
Little snippets of information which I know will be expanded in the book. But for anyone who's on Facebook, check it out on Facebook as well. Brilliant.
That's absolutely, honestly, it really is. It's unbelievable because I've dipped in and out. I've dipped in. I'm doing a project, and I might want you on as well there, Derek, but it's outside. Right. But, you know, if you never come into Liverpool, I could actually film you.
Oh, right.
I could actually film you, you know, sitting there, like, if you know what I mean. Because I'm doing this particular project. I've been working on it for a long time now. And Anthony knows about it, don't you, Anthony? What I'm doing in the summer.
And I can think of a couple of fantastic locations for maybe Derek.
Yes.
You know, the heart of,
do you know, if he does come down, you know the location I'm going to say, don't you? It's got to be the cabin.
The cabin.
It has to be the cabin, you know. So, you know, if you did care to come down to Liverpool and be filmed.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let me know when you're doing it, Frank.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've got others. I've got to ask mine and Anthony's friends, who are big actors, by the way, here. Yeah. In Liverpool, and I think they will appear, won't they, Anthony?
I think they love it. Yeah, it's all about showing not only the history side of Liverpool and the music and well, the whole cultural bubble, really, the arts, the music, the acting, the poetry, also the historic, the medicine side and everything else. But Derek, you'd be perfect. And I will probably be there on the day that you get filmed. I won't be involved in any filming, but I'll just hold the beers.
Oh, I'm well sold on this as an idea.
No, well, I just wanted. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and as I said, I'm getting some friends around, and I'm talking about friends who people know of as well. You know, they
Brilliant.
really know of, and they'll be talking on camera. But what I've got planned, it'll put Liverpool in a great light. It really will. I'm not just saying that. And, you know, because that's what I want to do. I want to show Liverpool in a good light, because I seen a post today which was absolutely disgraceful. You know, we were getting called bin zippers. Did you rub the wheels off the Chelsea bus and all this? You know, absolutely horrible, and that's what you call, you know. Anyway, enough about that. Enough. Oh, Paul Turner. Hi, Frank. Just popped in to say hello and have a good show. See you tomorrow. Thank you, Paul. Yes, see you tomorrow on the football show. Right, now is evening, Eric. Did you know the Crazy Whales of Arthur Brown are playing locally soon in Birkenhead at the Future Yard?
No, I didn't know that. Funny enough, Arthur Brown went to the same university as me, Reading.
Let's go away.
Yeah, apparently.
Wow.
We weren't in the same year or anything, but I thought that was quite cool.
Oh, what a small world that is. Absolutely amazing. So listen, Derek, what have you got for us tonight?
Well, we got quite a range of stuff, really. We're talking about George Martin. Not obviously the Beatles will pop in,
Yes.
but we're going to take a look at really before and after the Beatles, because he's an interesting kind of a character. And then almost unrelated, we got the Trogs and Scott McKenzie and hippies. But in a way, you know, there's an awful lot of overlap at a number of levels between the three topics. And that really, as well, that across the three of them, it really looks at how the first half of the 1960s sort of transitioned into the second half of the 1960s. I mean, musically, they were in different universes, basically. You know, the simple beat music of the first half of the 60s, and then around 65, 66, 67, it matured, and pop rock music really started to take itself seriously. Virtuoso musicians and all kinds of changes. And what's interesting is all three of those topics that we're looking at tonight, you know, they all interact with that story.
That's brilliant. That now, DW sent in this. I don't know whether you know, like, obviously you must know. He says George Martin did a really good 3-part TV program in the 90s. I loved it. Did you ever see it? No,
I don't recall seeing it. But
no.
I mean, there's an awful lot of great stuff like that on the TV now being reshown. I mean, there's some fabulous. I mean, Sky Arts channels carry some really good documentaries.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's something. No, I did it. I'm sorry, Derek, you know, to digress a little.
It's okay, no problem.
It's with the music anyway. And Mark says, have you asked John Lennon's sister, Julia Baird Lennon, to be involved in your filming, Frank? I'm sure she would say yes. She is a lovely woman and is heavily involved with the Cavern as well. Yeah, I'll be talking to, well, besides, I hope this fella comes down, Derek, to be filmed, because I know Julie Sudbury very, very well. She's a good friend of mine who's heavily involved in the Cavern. Yeah. Along with a boyfriend who's in a big band, and Tony O'Keefe, great fella. So I'll be filming them, Derek, and hopefully Paul Capper. You know Paul Capper, don't you, Anthony?
I do, yeah. Brilliant musician.
Great musician. So yeah, I'll hopefully be filming him as well. About that, along with you, Derek, you know, obviously, and we'll be talking about, you know, going back to the Beatles, talking about the likes of George Martin. Did George Martin? Here's a question for you, Derek. Did George Martin ever visit the Cavern?
The Cavern?
Yeah.
I'm not sure he did, because what happened was he sent one of his engineers up to see the Beatles at the Cavern in the very, very early days, around the time they became involved with Brian Epstein. I forget the guy's name now, but he definitely sent somebody up to check them out. I can't recall ever seen a reference to him going to the Cavern. I mean, he may have done, but I don't recall ever seeing a reference to that. I think it's probably unlikely, to be honest.
Yeah. Do you know what? I never had a clue about that. You know, that's why I asked you, you know, if it came up. But I didn't know that he knew about the Beatles before they were the Beatles. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he sent somebody up to check them out.
I never had a clue about that.
Yeah.
Wow, that surprised me. So obviously, how did he? Have you any idea how he got the words of the Beatles? You know, down in London. You know, don't forget he's a music producer, and he must have got words or someone must have gone down and said, "Listen."
Yeah. I think Jenny thought Brian Epstein organised that particular introduction. Because of course Epstein had nothing, as far as I know, had nothing to do with the Decca, because they in the January the 1st of that year, 1962, they had an audition with Decca Records down in London, and they failed that. They lost out to Brian Poole and the Tremolos, a local London group. And interestingly enough, it took Brian Poole about 18 months to get into the charts. After that, he released 3 or 4 records unsuccessfully. And it was only after the Beatles had their first hit with Love Me Do. I mean, pretty minor. It was bottom end of the top 20. But what's really interesting is every time you look at some aspect of rock and roll history, particularly associated, you know, across the 1960s, which started in 1962, the Beatles always seem to be at the forefront of whatever it is you're looking at. I mean, lots of other beat groups had released singles in the early part of 1962, but the Beatles was the first beat group to actually have a hit record. And there weren't many people who had a hit between Love Me Do and Please Please Me. And then, of course, the floodgates opened, as it were, in early 63, and the whole face of rock and roll completely changed. And groups dominated everything.
Well, Gary Rigby, he says, wasn't he involved with the Goons in the 50s?
Yeah, I mean, George Martin, it'd be worth having a quick look at what he was doing. I mean, he was famous. What's really interesting, I mean, he was born in 1926, just to give him a bit of positioning. But, you know, he's famous for signing the Beatles after Decca turned them down. But what's interesting is that at that time, Parlophone was a rather obscure label that concentrated on lesser known jazz and comedy, particularly some classical music. I mean, he joined EMI in September of 1950. He joined as the assistant to a guy named Oscar Preuss, who ran Parlophone at that time. And his primary focus was very much novelty and comedy records. I mean, comedy, people like Peter Ustinov, and it was 52 that he had his first hit, as far as I know, with a single called Mock Mozart, was sort of George Martin's first hit. As
Peter Ustinov.
Yeah. And
a great actor.
Yeah,
do you know what? I've got to tell you this before you carry on. That's fascinating, that. You know, when I go on holiday, I always bring a book with me, and I always read it, right? And this is, I bring, what's it called? I bring his autobiography with me.
Yeah.
Peter Ustinov's My Life, I think it's called, something like that. Anyway, only a short title, and I bring it with me. And there I am on the sunbed, bouncing, laughing my head off. And this Italian waiter came up to me and he went, "Hey, Franco, Marley, Dei Marley?" And he was asking me if I'm sick. I was bouncing up and down. I went, "No," I said, "I'm reading, you know, unbelievable."
Yeah.
It's, if anyone wants a good laugh and a brilliant autobiography, get onto Peter Ustonov's. You'll easy get it. You'll easy get it. I'm sorry there, Zerek. I had to come in with that.
No, it's interesting how various lines keep crossing over when you're looking at any particular subject. I mean, he's also very much Spike Milligan, Dudley Moore, Flanders and Swan, if anybody remembers The Gas Man Cometh, and Hippopotamuses and the like. Oh, brilliant. They were super. And jazz was big as well. He was very involved with Humphrey Littleton, Johnny Dankworth, Cleo Lane, and the likes. And he recorded people like Shirley Bassey, Jimmy Shand, Matt Monroe. So, if you look at the sort of pop music stuff he was doing, it was very much the 50s crooners and very much the sort of pop music associated with the 50s. And then he became head of Parlophone when the Oscar fella left in 1959. And what's interesting, you've got a complete reversal of the Decca turned down story.
Can I ask you about that? I'm sorry to butt in because it's very interesting. Do you know, like when Decca refused? Can I just look at the DW says? I think this is a great analogy. I think Epstein had the finger on the pulse. Yeah. George Martin was more like a surgeon that you're referred to. Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah.
He was, because he dissected everything about the Beatles, didn't he? Right.
Man for the job, really, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In my day, we go back and we say Decca blew it. And I believe, and I don't know if it's factual or that every anniversary of the dismissal from Decca, there was a party to say what we could have had. Let's raise a glass to what we could have had.
Absolutely.
And he blew it, But thankfully he did, because I think George Martin is the ingredient that the Beatles and Epi needed to become global.
Well, a couple of things there about. You mentioned Humphrey Littleton because I know that he actually played at the Cavern before it became the Cavern, if you know what I mean, because it was a jazz club.
Well, it's very much a jazz club.
Do you think he has any influence? I don't know. He couldn't have because when the Beatles were there, I don't know. I was going to ask you the daft question, about coincidences, the likes of Humphrey Littleton saying there's a group of lads you want to get it. I don't know. It's stupid. I'm sorry. Carry on.
Well, no, Humphrey Littleton actually did have a big influence on one of the Beatles songs, particularly. This is from the same sort of time. This is like early 1956. When George Martin was sort of head of A&R there. Humphrey Littleton recorded a song called Bad Penny Blues. And it was the only English hit that they ever had. It only got to number 19. But some years it popped up later as the backbone, very much the inspiration, the melody for the Beatles' Lady Madonna. In fact, Paul McCartney has, very openly credited Bad Penny Blues as being the backbone of Lady Madonna. And Joe Meek was the engineer on that. He didn't actually produce it, but he was the engineer. So, it's amazing what crops up. And what I was going to say about the Decca turning down thing, we just heard about the Beatles. It was the other way around. In 1956, George Martin turned down Tommy Steele, who was, the king of rock and roll in, British, English rock and roll. And he went to the Two Eyes, famous coffee bar in Soho. And he saw Tommy Steele playing with Wally Whiten's band, the Vipers. He often stood in as the lead singer. And George Martin turned down Tommy Steele as the signing, but he signed the Vipers instead. So it's interesting how sometimes, history repeats itself inversely, as it were.
I think that's unbelievable. And there's me thinking I was asking a daft question. that I'm not.
Well, no, I think that's a sign of demand. I think that George Martin's vision for music was way beyond a 9 to 5.
Oh, absolutely.
It was just visionary, wasn't it? With what he heard and what he saw and what a tweak would be, which is a rare thing in music, and it even rarer today in modern music. There is no George Martin out there.
Well, I think one of the exciting things about living through the, growing up, as it were, in the 1960s musically, was that when you heard things, you were hearing them for the first time. I mean, there'd never been anything like Elvis before Elvis, a little bit before what we're talking about. But I remember the first time I heard the Pink Floyd's album, I absolutely heard nothing like it. The first time you heard Jimi Hendrix, you'd heard nothing like it. And I think one of the great things about that era was that everything about it was new. And I think the Beatles again, and George Martin particularly, by the time we get to around 65, Rubber Soul, Revolver, and that sort of era, when the Beatles really came into their own, they stopped being a covers band. Rubber Soul was the first one with all, Beatles compositions. The music was getting an awful lot more sophisticated. And again, the Beatles were at the charging end of it.
That's a great thing of music, probably more than any other art form, is so inspirational to people that you hear things sometimes without knowing, and then it comes out in us in different ways. I mean, the Beatles were hearing soul stuff that was not in the charts in England, not Liverpool, and then they were forming their own version of this stuff. And George Martin, there's been so much debate over the years of who was the fifth Beatle. Was it Brian Epstein? Brian Epstein served an absolute vital heartbeat for the Beatles. But if you think of the fifth Beatle musically, then it had to be George Martin, really.
Yeah, because Stuart Sutcliffe couldn't play. Could he play, actually? I don't know. Could you answer that, Derek? Could he play an
George
instrument?
Martin?
No. I'm sorry about that. I've got an itchy nose. Anyway, no, I mean, Stuart Sutcliffe, could he play an instrument?
No, by and large, he wasn't the best bass player that ever graced the back of a stage. Apparently, they used to turn him down a lot, and he'd stand with his back to the audience. I think the thing was, I mean, he was John Lennon's friend from the art school days. He bought his first bass guitar when he sold a picture for 50 quid, which, 1960 time is, earlier than that, is a lot of money. And he sold one of his paintings. I think it was called Summer Painting. It was abstract expressionism. And John persuaded him to spend the money on a bass guitar, and he joined the band. But I don't think his heart was ever in the music side. I mean, he was very much a painter, and he saw himself, the direction he was going, I think, had he not had the brain hemorrhage, very much in the direction of being a painter. I mean, that first time in Hamburg, he met Astrid Kircher, famous photographer at the time, and it was her that really inspired the Beatle hairstyles. They used to hang around with the X's, short for existentialist, I think, sort of German equivalents of the Beatniks, and they all wore their hair in that fringe style. And John and Paul went over to. I think it was Paul's 21st. No, it couldn't have been 21st. It was Paul's birthday. They were going off, trying to hitchhike down to Spain, but they didn't get any further than Paris. And they met up with a couple of people they'd known from the Hamburg days. And that was when they, had their hair styled like that. And apparently that's one of the things that always gets said about Pete Best. He refused to have the fringe style, but I'm not sure.
Well, do you know what you said? Yeah, because he had his hair was greased back, wasn't it?
Yeah, his was much more rocker.
And have you any idea? Was it a Parisian who styled their hair? Or
no, it was one of these exes who was living in Paris at the time. The bass player who played with John Lennon. Designed the Revolver sleeve. Famous guy. I can't think of his name. Klaus Forman. Yeah, I think he was involved as well. And basically, they sort of styled their hair, and they got back to Liverpool, and persuaded George to have his hair like that, and the rest, as they say, is history. There's just one other person that's worth mentioning just before we get to the Beatles, and that's in 1961, November. A guy called Paul Raven released a single called Tower of Strength. It didn't trouble the charts at all in the UK. Frankie Vaughan had a 34 with it as a cover in 61. The original was a Gene McDaniel song. But the reason I mention that is that, like a lot of people, Paul Raven decided that wasn't a good stage name. So he changed his name to Gary Glitter and became quite famous then, even more infamous.
More famous now, yeah.
Do you know that Tower of Strength is that... hang on, let me try. Hang on a minute.
If I
were a tower of strength, I'd walk away. I'd look in your eyes, and here's what I'd say. I don't want you, I don't leave you, I don't love you anymore. And I'll walk out the door.
That's the one.
I wish I could sing that to a few exes of mine. I'm going like that. Go on, get out. No, I'm sorry, man. I'm just not anyway.
No, it's a great. It was my dad's favourite song. That he loved it.
Really, and that was Frankie Vaughan, wasn't it?
That was Frankie Vaughan had the hit in this country. Not a big hit, but I mean, Frankie Vaughan was. He must have had certainly 10, 15 hit singles across the late 50s, early 60s. Great voice.
Kind of voice,
great voice.
You know, yeah. You can't even. I don't even know what kind of a voice he had, but it was like, I don't know.
It's sort of raspy.
Now, GWC's here. I wanted to ask you this. Mm-hmm. You know, like you've been through the genres of music, eras rather. Do you think I love the look and feel of that era? You know, like the 60s. You know, where you're at the late 50s. And then all of a sudden you had the Beatles. And then I tell you what got me was Scott McKenzie.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know anything about him, Scott McKenzie? Because I thought, you know, if you're going to San Francisco, and I always remember reading something, couples were getting married in San Francisco. You mentioned hippies. These are hippies. Yeah. Flower power people.
Oh, absolutely.
And they were getting married to the song. Can you tell me a little bit about, the song itself, also about Scott McKenzie?
He's an interesting guy. It's worth just looking how the sort of build up to that particular song, because he had a very interesting musical journey. He's another one who changed his name because he decided that Philip Wallach Blondheim III perhaps wasn't the easiest name in the world to remember. And he was in a band called the Smoothies, not his first band. We'll have a look at them a little bit later. But a guy called Jackie, he said, I want to change my name. Nobody can remember this. So a guy called Jackie Curtis, a comedian, an American comedian at the time, he said that Scott McKenzie looked a bit like a Scotty dog. And John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas, they were big friends. I think they met because their mothers were friends. So they met as teenagers. I'm not sure exactly where and when, but very early on. And he just had a daughter, and he called her Mackenzie. And Scott McKenzie didn't like Scotty, but he thought, Scott McKenzie, we'll have a bit of that. So that's how the name came about. But he started in a high school band called the Singing Strings. This is the mid-50s. And that was where he was with Tim Rose, another fabulous singer-songwriter, Come Away Melinda and stuff. Absolutely brilliant guy. And then in the late 50s, he got involved, he formed a doo-wop group called the Abstracts. And then a couple of years later, they moved from wherever they were living, I can't remember now, but they moved to New York, and they changed their name to the Smoothies. And that was, I suppose, because they were making they were moving to New York, and they cut a couple of singles with Decca as well. So they got a record deal. And that's probably when Scott McKenzie decided that Philip Wallach Blondheim III isn't the sort of thing that is going to pull too many people.
Where did he get his name from? Is it you mentioned about someone said that he looked like a Scotty dog?
Yeah, a guy called Jackie Curtis apparently told him he looked like a Scotty dog.
And it's not where he got his name from. And Mackenzie.
That's where the Scott came from.
Yeah.
And then Mackenzie from John Phillips' daughter. He just had a baby daughter and called her Mackenzie. Yeah.
I thought it was like a Scottish connection, Mackenzie and, the Scotty dog. I didn't know that. That's brilliant, that. Scott. And I always thought that it was even right now, till you said it. I thought that was his real name, Scott McKenzie.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a lot of these names. I mean, someone like Engelbert Humperdinck, you can guess probably didn't start out on his birth certificate. But something like Scott McKenzie, it's the sort of name that you wouldn't really think twice about accepting as the birth certificate name.
Yeah.
And then it starts to get really interesting for him, because he joined a band called, he and Scott McKenzie and John Phillips called a band called The Journeymen, who were really quite successful. Because you got in the early 60s, you've got this whole folk revival scene going on, Greenwich Village and all that. And they were really quite successful. They were with a guy called Dick Weissman. And then that was 61. In 64, Scott McKenzie decided to go solo. And the Journeymen became the new Journeymen. Some new people came involved, and they actually morphed into the Mamas and the Papas. So, in another life somewhere, there will be the original version of the Mamas and the Papas would be with Scott McKenzie.
Well, do you know the San Francisco one?
Yeah.
Did he write that, or was it someone else?
John Phillips wrote it.
Oh, go away. Mamas and the Papas.
Yeah, and Lou Adler and John Phillips produced it. I mean, he was a really big friend. He would have been in the Mamas and the Papas, had they stayed together. Whether it would have been the same kind of group, I don't know. But that was very much where he was headed. Then he just wanted to go solo for a change. But he was also involved in the just after his first single came out, literally weeks later. It became a hit on the 10th of June, 67 in America. And the festival, the Montreux festival, was a couple of weeks after that. I mean, arguably the most important rock festival in history. I mean, that was the gateway for the Who and Jimi Hendrix into America. It was when the Monkees saw Jimi Hendrix at Monterey that they invited them to open on the Monkees tour, and that lasted about 5 gigs before they amicably, apparently, parted company. Janis Joplin, it catapulted Janis Joplin to national fame. She was with Big Brother and the Holding Company at that particular time, and I think they played twice. They played on the Sunday afternoon. The organisers were so impressed with Janis Joplin and Big Brother that they invited her back later on, and that she got signed up to major record deals.
Do you know we've got to go for a break now. I'm awfully sorry, but I want you to ponder on this question.
Okay.
And it's from Mark Simons, but carry on as well, after the break.
Brilliant.
Because I want to know a lot more stuff. Mark Simon says, what does Derek make of the Dave McGowan books on the connection of the 60s artists and music scene with the military and the CIA, if you know anything about that?
Right. I haven't actually...
What we'll do, please... we'll get back to these questions because there's a lot of questions afterwards. But we've got to have a break now. I hope you don't mind. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah,
I'm
perfect.
here after the break. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Anthony.
Welcome, guys.
Say this city's name almost anywhere in the world and people will recognise it. Whether that's for its football,
Fabinho's got some space, he's got 3 up there with him, and he squeezes it through the legs!
its rich history, or the music that was born here. Because as British cities go, few are more iconic than Liverpool.
The friendliness of people here has really taken me aback.
From the welcoming nature of the people here to their unique accents, Liverpool feels different. Some Scousers, as people from Liverpool are called, think of it a bit like a city-state, separate from the rest of the country. And many don't identify with England at all, displaying banners like "Scouse not English." Liverpool fans have even been known to boo the British national anthem at football games. So what's this divide all about, and why has Liverpool ended up so different from the rest of the country? We were here to find out. Of all the cities in England, Liverpool in particular is known for doing things its own way. There's even a unique name for people from Liverpool: Scousers or Scouse. Why? Well, the story begins with whalers, who came to Liverpool in the 17 and 1800s.
So the only people who could do whaling around Europe were the Norwegians. So we sent for a crew of Norwegian sailors to come over and go up to the Arctic. Obviously there was a Liverpool crew as well, and they joined the ships as well. And these lads, to keep warm, they had their own meal, and they used to have a fire, and they used to put meat, they used to put potatoes, they used to put carrots, and it was called lobscouse. So the Liverpool lads, when everything dies down and they joined other ships, and they started to make this lobscouse, just like the Norwegians did. So when people from around the world met sailors, they said, "Where are you from?" And they said, "Liverpool." They go, "Scouse."
Back then, Liverpool was a booming trading port. So important that it was sometimes referred to as the New York of Europe.
When you look back, Liverpool, it was incredible. It was an incredible port with lots of activity. Liverpool was known as the second city of the empire, obviously behind the capital London, because of the trade. There was immense trade, and it was incredible.
The bustling docks produced the unique Scouse accent you'll hear if you visit today. It's unlike any other in the UK, and was a result of the melting pot that this city became, where people from all over the world with different ways of speaking mixed together. And it's most influenced by Irish, Welsh, and Norwegian immigrants. Nowadays, though, Liverpool has an unfair but pretty bad reputation, and people often joke about it being a lawless and dirty city.
Watch your bags. Don't go to Liverpool, they steal your hubcaps or your wheels or whatever. And this is the way Liverpool are portrayed. Unfortunately, Scousers. Why are you going to Liverpool? You end up being beaten up and you're being burgled and being... They always get looked down upon. Always get looked down upon by the press, the English press, unfortunately. For some reason, we don't know. You know, we're looked at down the noses, you know, especially accents.
Frank often has to battle people's preconceptions about him that are based purely on the way he speaks and where he's from.
When I tell them I'm a lecturer, they don't believe me, simply because of my accent. It's gone now that it's water off a duck's back to me. It's the way it is. It's just the way people perceive Liverpool. Liverpool's got a terrible image, even today.
In reality, the problems that any major city faces, crime, litter, and so on, are no worse here than anywhere else. So how did Liverpool go from being the second city of the British Empire to one that has so often been looked down upon by other parts of Britain, where so many of its residents feels Scouse rather than English. Well, Liverpool has always been a bit independent. Part of that can be put down to immigration, particularly from Ireland following the Irish famines in the 17 and 1800s, which really changed the demographics here. At one point in the 1950s, a quarter of Liverpool's population was Irish-born. It also has such a large Welsh population that it's sometimes jokingly called the capital of North Wales. All these people from different places, some with less than stellar opinions of the rest of England because of tension between the English and Irish and Welsh, gave the city a distinct sense of self. But it was the 1900s that really drove a wedge between Liverpool and the rest of England. And it began with a general strike.
So in 1911, there was a general strike here. They wanted decent wages. They wanted some sort of parity with other cities. They wanted to live a life rather than struggle. And that was a massive struggle that they had, and a massive struggle against the government, because the government at the time sent up 50,000 armed troops. They sent for 6,000 police from Birmingham and Leeds to take control, because the police here in Liverpool said, we can't fight against our own people. There were 2 dockers shot dead by troops. Everything had stopped. Everything, from the dock workers, they stopped. Everything, railway, everything was stopped. And Churchill, he actually sent up 2 frigates to turn its guns on the city, just in case, because they said we can't afford anarchy to spread out into the country. So we were on our own there, and unfortunately it was squashed. Did the workers get anything? No. They never achieved much, unfortunately, during that particular strike. So it was over by September. The strike was over.
What do you think of that, boys?
Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
You know, that's why. Sorry.
Disturbing side of history that we, in parts, we don't want to remember, but it happened, you know, and that builds up the levels of why does Liverpool see itself as kind of not Britain?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I just want to mention my sponsors of the Frank Carlyle Show, and it's Gap Painting Services. Listen, people, honestly, if you need any decorating done, please get these in. If you're an NHS worker, if you're an OAP, brilliant discounts for you. Not just saying reasonable discount, the brilliant discounts for you. If you're an OAP or an NHS worker, if you need anything done, but they're reasonable anyway. Even if you don't qualify as an NHS worker or an OAP, get them in. If you need something done, just get them in. They're fully insured, they're fully time served as well. They're brilliantly, excuse me, they're brilliant at tidying up, quick, in and out there. And they leave a fantastic job for you to admire. And get them in. And that's Gap Painting Services, my sponsors of the Frank Carlyle Show, the lovely lads. Please get them in and do yourself a favour. If you can't do any decorate, like myself, I can't decorate anymore. Everyone used to do their own decorating, but the likes of me now, can't do it. Can't do it anyway. But anyway, that's excuse me. That's Gap Painting Services, and I'm going straight back now to Derek to tell us more about intriguing the music business. It's not just a business, is it? Some of the great artists.
Well, coming back to that question about, I haven't actually read those books, but there was strong links really in between sort of the CIA, the feds, and musicians. I mean, John Lennon was famously, had a CIA file on him. And I think what it is, of course, you've got to remember this is the time of the Vietnam War, and particularly rock music. By the time we get to, DMB and Few was what, 67, I think, or when the war turned and the North invaded the South. And it took about on hundreds of hamlets and cities. They actually made an attack on the embassy, and the American embassy. It was quelled after about 3 months in total. But a lot of the music at the time was very anti-war. It was very anti-establishment. It was the whole counterculture. I think it was 67 that the Rolling Stone magazine arrived, and that was, I don't think there's anything like it at the time. It combined politics and music. So, you could see that the government would consider that, the music, the rock music of its day was very much against American policy, American foreign policy. So it's not difficult to see a lot of links and why the CIA would take a lot of interest in people. And it was also the time McCarthyism, of course, the House of Un-American Activities and the like. I mean, Pete Seeger, he fell foul of them. He ended up in prison for a while for not disclosing refusing to disclose his political views. So, there's an awful lot of links going on there between the music of the time and the establishment.
Do you know, can I come in there when you mentioned about the era of McCarthyism?
Yeah.
I think there's a great little story. It's only brief, by the way. It's not long. It's a great little story, and it's about Arthur Miller. Now, Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible. As you know, he wrote The Crucible. And he went up to McCarthy himself, Senator McCarthy, and he went, this is signed copy. And oh, great. He said, I want you to read it. And he went, oh, yes, I will. Anyway, he read it. He said, what a fantastic book. Great play. That's absolutely brilliant. It was about him. Salem Witch Hunt. It was about McCarthy. That's why he wrote it. Isn't that how ironic?
Absolutely.
Is that how ironic? And I think that's a great story, for this madman McCarthy and the great Arthur Miller. Wonderful. Carry on, Derek.
No, I mean, it's just interesting. It's not really hypocrisy. It's just interesting how inclusivity, if you like, it's often only inclusive of people who think like me. Orwell's doublespeak and reinventing history and everything. It just has gone on for so long. And in the 60s, I think, because that generation was very, very anti-establishment, anti-war, I think it really sort of stood out. But,
can I ask you? There's a comment there. I think it's like a question to you, and I'd love you. Even Anthony could come in on this. Well, I'd like you to answer it, Derek, please. Elvis Presley, this is Gary Rigby actually. Elvis Presley hated the Beatles. He was a snitch. Can you elaborate on that?
I've never actually come across any references to Elvis hating the Beatles. I mean, they famously only ever met once. Elvis was in Bel Air, I think it was, and they went around to his place. Paul famously played bass guitar, and they jammed around a little bit with Elvis. But everything I've ever read about that one particular meeting, it was just a bit of a non-affair. Basically, maybe you should never meet your heroes kind of thing. That just seemed to be, some guys got together, they had a few beers, jammed around, chatted. Beatles went home, and as far as I know, they never met again. I've never come across a reference where Elvis actually hated the Beatles. I can't really see any reason why he should. I mean, he survived. And what happened in 1964, when the Beatles went on the Ed Sullivan Show in the February, they started what's generally considered, what's called the British invasion. And for around the next 2 years, British groups dominated the American market. Some American groups even changed their name to names like the Beefeaters and Beau Brummels to try and get some airplay. But this is where Elvis's manager might have been really quite more canny than most people give him credit for. Colonel Parker. What he did, he made Elvis into the 60s. He didn't compete Elvis against the Beatles at all. What he did, he put Elvis into movies. They all made a lot of money. They're not very highly rated, but they were all very commercially successful at the time. So to see Elvis, you had to go to the movies. To hear Elvis, you had to buy music from the movies. So Elvis never actually competed. And what happened basically, people like Fats Domino had their last hit single in America in 1964. It basically that finished off what was left of the American 1950s stars. And Elvis, had he then gone into competition with the Beatles, and then in 66 got into competition with the new rock music, Jimi Hendrix and the like, it might have been a very different story for Elvis. But he had no reason to hate the Beatles, I don't think.
Well, okay. Now, there's a couple of things here, just like to go through them, and I think this is what it's all about. Now, Anfield Law says he was an FBI snitch, right? And Gary
Elvis was. We're saying Elvis was a snitch.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was that, what they might be referring to then is Elvis met President Nixon. He was on a plane flying somewhere, and he famously wrote President Nixon a letter on a little notepad, headed American Airlines notepad, about 4 or 5 pages. And basically it said, please, Mr. President, can I come and see you? I really would like to be a CIA agent, a drugs agent. And he met Nixon, and Elvis gave Nixon a replica of a Colt 45 as a present, and Nixon made Elvis I forget exactly what it's called, but it was an agent, drugs agency, an agent in the drugs agency, which was a bit ironic because Elvis was quite into stimulants of various sorts. And Elvis, was officially an agent, but he never actually went around arresting anybody.
No, but Gary says he wanted Lennon kicked out of the country. He was with Nixon and the CIA.
Yeah.
Now,
this is this meeting. That's what he says in this letter to. So
do you think it's all hyped up, Derek?
No. There's a facsimile of that. You can pick that. You can see that 5-letter handwritten note from Elvis, and he says things like, the country's going to the dogs. It's full of junkies. I can't remember if he mentions John Lennon by name. He might well do. I can't remember that bit. And I can understand what the comment is then, but that's the context of it. I think from Elvis's point of view, I think it was a little bit tongue in cheek.
Well, I know that Nixon wanted Lennon out. I do know that myself.
Oh, yeah.
He wanted him out because, with his little marches, stop the war in Vietnam and stop killing kids with napalm, which today, people are marching, as you know, against what's happening in Gaza. And, we're ordinary people. We're not politicians. And we're trying to tell the politicians what to do. And Elvis was a big influencer. Now, I was talking to someone, I'm going back years, I was going back years ago. And this particular person like Anthony knows his stuff. He said to me that Elvis was actually jealous of the Beatles. Jealous. And it's like when they met, we all know that they did jam. And someone asked, did you film it or tape it? And he said, no, we didn't yet, jamming with Elvis. Point is, he said he was jealous because, as you know, Elvis was on the wane. He was this great big king. He became king after he died, didn't he? He wasn't called the king then. It was after he died, and they made him iconic. The Americans made this man iconic after his death. No,
the king.
Go on.
I was just going to say that name of the king was early on in his career. It was when he was about around 56. Early on, there was a newspaper article that said, "I've just seen the young man who's going to be the king of rock and roll." And it became a title there. I mean, I can see how Elvis might be considered to be, or could well have been, jealous of the Beatles. I mean, he wasn't overly happy. I mean, he enjoyed the films a bit, but I mean, he quite wanted to be a serious actor. If you look at, I've seen some interviews of him around the sort of King Creole, late 50s, early 60s kind of time. And he said he wanted to be another James Dean, basically.
Did you know that? I think there was a film with Elvis in, I don't know whether it was in black and white, but it wasn't any of these girls, or those other daft things, and he was a cowboy.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that he wanted then, he wanted to be. This is only what I've read, Derek. He wanted to be a film star and play more cowboy roles.
Yeah, if you see interviews of him in the early days, he does say that he'd love to be an actor. That's his first film was that cowboy film, Love Me Tender, originally called the Reno Brothers, but Love Me Tender was a big hit. So I think it was Paramount, whoever the studio was. They decided they'd capitalize on, Elvis. So they stuck 3 or 4 songs in the film, changed the name from the Reno Brothers to Love Me Tender. And it's the only film he didn't have top billing, the only film he dies in.
Well, listen, can you... What did you say at me?
Sorry, his music in that got him to the top of the charts. So it's a weird thing with the whole pop industry is that your audience follows you to a sense. And Elvis built up a new audience with the movies. And a lot of the audience that loved him doing Mystery Train and what I regard as my favourite stuff of his catalogue drifted away. And a famous quote that I remember, which is a bit cruel, but it's kind of like John Lennon, to be blunt and to the point. When Elvis died and someone said to John Lennon, what do you think of the news that Elvis has died? And John Lennon said something like, he died when he joined the army.
That's right.
And so that was a kind of a kick against all of the films and the pop stuff that came with it.
It's strange, isn't it? How you can look at these iconic. He was a superstar. Not taking that away from the man himself. I never liked Elvis. I'm being honest. And I remember watching his Las Vegas. Where he was on singing "Suspicious Minds" and all that. And that's when I liked him because he was singing live. And I thought, this fella's brilliant. I
loved him as a kid because that energy that we love in different genres of music, whether it be punk music or whatever, that motivated so many people, like Pink Floyd, like the Beatles, like the Stones, like all of that. And you think, wow, but we did not have the wherefore in those days to kind of protect that. So the way forward was, put a silly wig on, pretend to be something else, Hollywood, gets in, and the art of it, or the what do we call the soul of it, is gone.
Can I ask Derek a question? It's been bugging me for years, this, right? Was Elvis blonde and he dyed his hair black and he had to keep on dyeing it black?
Yeah, he famously dyed his hair black across his entire career. I think it probably was quite dark because he was sort of First Nation heritage, apparently.
Yeah.
But he definitely did dye his hair. He used boot polish, but it must have been some special kind of dye, because otherwise he'd get so hot it would run. I remember, back in the a long time ago, but 16 years old kind of time, just starting to grow moustaches and things. And this is the mid-'60s, so Zapata moustaches were very, very cool. And I grew one, and it was a little bit light, so I remember putting mascara on it, my girlfriend's mascara. And I played the drums, and we went to this local gig one night, and I was a very enthusiastic drummer, much down the Keith Moon sort of school of hit everything as hard as you can, as fast as you can, as often as you can. I remember, I used to work up a serious sweat, and all this mascara started to run. And I've often thought about that when I read about or hear about Elvis and his dyed hair, why it never, ever ran. So it must have been some seriously good dye.
Did you used to twirl your sticks? Did you used to twirl your sticks around your fingers as you were drumming? Like
no, I know exactly what. I never quite cracked that.
Couldn't you crack that though?
I cracked a few cymbals, though, I'll tell you that. I went through a few snare heads.
I thought they were dangerous thing, those, because I remember, I don't know whether it was the Kinks or it was Noddy Older and his little band, where someone was split open by a cymbal, because I don't know whether it came off the thing, the stand, or he threw it at someone, but one of the band members was split open because of it. I don't know. I think it was one of the Kinks or one of Noddy Older's bands, and that's all I'm saying on that. Look, Vase of Flowers said, I forget where it is now. Oh, yeah. Elvis Costello was my Elvis. There you go. What did you think of him, Elvis Costello?
I thought it was good. Yeah.
Well, let's see a few comments here. Millions of brown people were killed in a war that Elvis supported. No wonder he died by peanut butter on the toilet. That's mad, that, isn't it? That is mad. Mind you, I think I really believe that with wars and everything else, the Americans, it was conscription, and they had to go. Other lads didn't. They went over to Canada and sat it out there. But once you were conscripted, and I think Elvis was in a sort of correct me if I'm wrong here. He was in a sort of a predicament, where his mother was a very proud lady, an American, where, in my opinion, she was, and his dad, allowing their sons to join the army, to go and fight for the country. It was like that right through. It's like that right through. But I think with our generation today and what's been going on the last few years, I'm going back to like 2000, 1999 to today, that the likes of the younger generation now are looking and going like that. That's wrong. The government's doing all this. No matter what government it is. So they're standing back now, and they're having a voice. And that's why the British Army, I don't want to get into this, but that's why the British Army is so small. We have an army that's very small, one of the smallest on the planet. But And this is why I think that there's new generations of young people, especially in America as well. They're saying, no, we've had enough of this. We have had enough of this. And your wars, we don't want any more. That's why there's many protests today because of politicians.
I think, as Derek was saying before about the 60s, which I regard as like opening Pandora's box with everything, because we've gone through the war years, we're coming out to the 50s, which are kind of still in black and white, and then poets, writers, artists, actors, people were allowed to express in a way that they weren't. And I don't think the powers that be, establishments, call them what they want, on any country, certainly the major countries, America and stuff, were expecting the youth following of pop stars, singers, poets. And I think at the time we get to the late 60s when the Beatles had just hit orbit, and then this possibility that these people singing and talking can persuade generations in a way that governments can't. There was that kind of rockiness. That's why it became a threat. That's why Lennon became a threat. And the others. You know, he wasn't.
Happy Xmas War is over.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Happy Xmas War is over. If you want to give peace a chance, all you need is love.
Well, Macca did his give Ireland back to the Irish.
Give Ireland back to the Irish.
You know.
Can I say something about that, please? Because there's something about look. George Bernard Shaw said he came out with a quote, and I'm talking about if you think about this, right? The Irish potato potato famine, right? And he said, how could the country, how could the country be starving when the country was full of food? That's what he said. How could there be a famine when the country was full of food? How could there be a famine when the country was full of food? And you had in 1845, you had this unbelievable famine, potato famine. And it was only in one area, and that was in Strokestown. But it's affected the whole of Ireland. And if you look, I do the Irish question. I used to lecture about the Irish question until I retired. And what you've got a decimation of the population of Ireland. It dropped to 1/3 of its population through the Irish famine. Think about that. 1/3, it dropped right down. And what you have the influx then. And these people didn't want to go to England because the English were blamed for it all. And they didn't want to come to England. And if you think about it, these were just ordinary people who worked the land. Ordinary people, ordinary labourers. And they all jumped on boats. They all thought that they were going to America, and it took days to get here. And these were diseased people as well. So by the time they landed in Liverpool, they didn't know anything about accents or anything like that. They knew nothing, they didn't know what an American accent was, or they didn't know what an English accent. Well, they did, with the bloody soldiers. But once they landed here, they thought that they were in America. They thought that we were in America. And I did some Irish chap. He asked me to do a podcast, to go on his podcast talking about the history of Ireland. And I shocked people. I shocked people by, You think Liverpool, if you're Irish, there's a welcome. That was a load of garbage. It was only later that when that song came out, because the Liverpool Mercury, the Echo, which became the Echo, by the way, we had 7 newspapers. Not one of them wanted the Irish here. They called them thieves. They called them for everything. Snakes, devils, you name it, they called them for everything. I've got the papers here. I think they're by Derek's. In
the same cupboard.
But, and that's the way it was. And as I said, George Bernard Shaw, it was a starvation period by the English. And as George Bernard Shaw says, how could there be a famine when the country was full of food? But someone asked me that, about the Irish famine. Can you just elaborate on it a little? I know it's like your show and that, whatever. So I've answered you. And yes, 86,000 Irish people came over from Ireland into Liverpool. They really thought that they were in America. Believe that. And don't forget that there were ships on the Mersey that were quarantined. They were quarantined. And then when they finally came here, they were thrown in slums. And it was shocking for the It was just shocking for the ordinary poor Liverpool people. The poor were living in hovels. Anyway, that's that. And I'm sorry to go on, but I had to answer that question, Derek.
That would be an interesting and a brilliant program if Derek was up to it one time and you were up to it. So what do we do with that? We protest that, but no one hears it because there was not a media and there was not a pop chart to outlay that expression of outrage. People would have been outraged and were outraged, but nothing happened. And again, it goes back to the 60s when the doors were kind of opened and we were allowed to speak a bit more freer. And then we could condemn Vietnam War, we could condemn whatever we wanted. It's interesting to think what results might have happened if influential people had stood up and said, whoa, this is wrong. What you're doing is totally wrong. It's horrendous. Stop it.
I think from a music point of view, it's just so different now. In the 60s, music was absolutely in dance halls where you met young ladies, pubs where you went out for a drink, and music was at the absolute heart, the absolute center of everything. Now the mobile phone is, and I think now, Taylor Swift I've seen an article saying Taylor Swift will influence 70% of the American voting public. How much truth there is in that, I don't know. But I think now, music plays a very, very, very small part in, youth culture. Influencers now seem to be people on TikTok and the like, which I really don't understand. Yeah,
I think that's more influential, Derek.
Absolutely.
Social media, because they're coming out, they're seeing things. It's like this TW lad. We go on different. I don't watch. I'm being honest. I don't watch the Western narrative anymore because it's full of lies. It's propaganda, disinformation, misinformation. Everything is coming out with this absolutely ridiculous narrative that they're trying to feed people. So we go on a different alternative. We go on to the truth seekers, and these people are academics. They're not like, may just spout me mouth off about the Irish famine or anything like that. These are proper academics. And this is where you're spot on, Derek. See, when Lennon sang, Xmas War is Over, when they sang Give Peace a Chance, the Beatles, and, All You Need Is Love, when they sang that, people were taking an avid interest in it. And especially the likes of the flower people, the flower power. This is what it was, a massive, shall we say demonstration? I don't know. But I always remember Nixon sending in the National Guards. I forget what university it was. And 30 students were actually killed by the National Guards on some university campus.
Ohio?
That was University of Kent. There were four students shot dead.
Yeah.
But don't you think that it hasn't left us? Because there's a lad now today who's been, accused of. I'm not saying the country's flag in case I get into bloody trouble, but carrying a flag, a certain country's flag, who think that they're under terrible atrocities, and he was carrying their flag, and now he could go to jail for it. So where's the freedom of speech? We've got
I think that's long gone. I think freedom of speech is a thing of the past now.
Well, okay, Derek, you know so much about like influences. How do you think if Lennon, in his prime, would have been with us today, right now, say he was like 28, at the height of the Beatles, right? He was 28 years of age. How do you think he would have felt about today and about freedom of speech? How do you think he would have felt?
Well, I think he'd be pretty appalled at the fact that if you don't say, if your opinion is not within a set of guidelines, if you question, what's changed, I think, is life used to be about, well, science say, life used to be about testing a hypothesis. You run some tests, check the hypothesis, and see what the results were. Now, I think what happens is people use the hypothesis to prove the conclusion. And it's easy to do that in science. It's easy, you just start, especially if you're using big mathematical models, you just choose which data you're going to use. And I think that's where we are now. And I think fundamentally, the big problem is, as a species, we just don't get on with each other. I think, we are a tribal species. And I don't think that there's a political structure in the world that will turn us into one happy 8 billion people all hugging each other. Sadly, I just think there's nothing there for that. So, we seem to be moving back to the time of the Spartans, where, people have the ability to protect themselves. It's like a bit like, I don't say a bully in a sense, but, if you come for me, you hit me, pal, I'll be hitting you back quite hard. And, I think I'm not saying that's the answer, but it just seems to me that the real problem is so fundamental and just so fundamentally insurmountable that the problem is it's just going from bad to worse. You look at the last 20 years, life isn't richer, I don't think.
No, of course it's not. Of course. Go ahead, Anthony. What was you going to say?
Well, all I was going to say, and I totally agree with what Derek's saying. And it's like what you said about seeking out various places to get the truth, right? It's like someone's put a blanket over everything. So Chinese whispers and stuff emerge. And once upon a time, and getting to our subject, which is close to all our heart, is music and literature. Once upon a time, art was used to inform people. This is what's going on. Bob Dylan, prime example.
Absolutely.
The Beatles in their way. And absolutely, you have an audience of millions of people who tune in and say, that's right, I checked that out. Now we don't have that so much. I mean, I can think of a small handful of musicians. I could be wrong, and our watchers and listeners may know far more than me. But I can think of people like Bruce Springsteen, who still carries that torch and will still write and sing a song about injustice. But not many more I can think of, which is sad. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna sing a song now. All right. It's a sea shanty, and it's 40 verses long. And I'd like you to join in the chorus, and everyone on there as well.
Yeah.
Look at Derek looking at me. Do you think I'm going to sing a sea shanty 40 verses long?
I do not have one of life's good singing voices. You do not want me singing on your show if you want people to come into the next one.
Go for me, kazoo.
I said that at a talk, you know. Andy was late when he came in, and I gave a talk the week before last. And anyway, I went in. I was absolutely shocked. I was chock-a-block. And you know, like
me and Lorraine were trying to come in quietly. And he goes, "There he is, coming in now."
Thinking like that. But you know what? It was shocking, wasn't it, Anthony?
What?
So anyway, I'm standing there, you know, and I get introduced, great introduction by this fella. So anyway, I start, I just said, ladies and gents, I said, you're all expecting a history, aren't you? And they were all nodding and saying, yeah, and, you know, clapping. So when I said, I'm not going to talk about history. I want to give a rendition of all these sea tales of songs, all the sea shanties. And I just want to give a couple of hours of singing lots of songs. You should have seen the faces on them. They were all like... I said, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. That's when Anthony walked in. But you see, it's like songs, in my opinion, Derek, you know, they did influence the young. No, I forget the name of the film, and Robin Williams was a DJ, and it was about Vietnam.
Yeah,
Good morning.
That's it. Good morning, Vietnam. Now, I know young people, I watched it. Now, it was horrible. There was a juxtaposition between fantastic music that we loved.
Yeah, exactly.
And the horrors of war. And it wasn't even a fine balance. But I tried to shut out the horrors of war. And this is what it was about, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And they say, you know, I don't know. And Hollywood is still coming out with these tough movies, to be honest, about, you know, horrors of war and Navy SEALs. No.
So that's the downside of Hollywood. I mean, you look at Derek was talking before about Monterey Festival, which, in my way of thinking, is probably the most important festival because it introduced talent that became well known by the time Woodstock hit. But in Woodstock Festival, you have Jimi Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner in the way of a meteoric war, missiles falling and screaming and shouting. And when he was I think it was one of the American chat show guys, and I forget his name, but I can see his face, who interviewed him. And the establishment then therefore called it monstrous, this outrageous insult to the American anthem. And when Hendrix was asked about it, he said, well, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was fantastic. And it says what it is, what's going on in Vietnam. And that make so much sense. I remember seeing that interview when I was far younger, and I watch it now and I think that's the power of someone who's in the public realm saying, I think that's wrong and this is right. And we don't have enough of that. A part of it is because the media is now, we can go into that debate, the media is not really strictly all turf, it's owned. You know, you've got to be licensed and stamped and to say what we want, which is wonderful about tonight, because it gives me the chance to say I have always hated blue Smarties, but I love all the other colours.
Can I ask you something, Jerry?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've only got 10 minutes to go. Can you give us something on? I just read a thing there of the vase of flowers, and it's I love Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran. Can you give us something about Eddie Cochran? Because I remember as a kid, and I think it was our Angela or our Mary, when he died, he was only 20, 21 or something like that, am I right?
Yeah.
And they were crying. They were actually crying when he died. I was only a kid, but I always remember that. That always resonates with me when I see his name. Can you give us anything about him?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at...
I'm sorry it's off the cuff.
That's fine. I mean, Gene Vincent was co-starring with Eddie Cochran on that last tour when he came over to the UK. And Tony Sheridan, the Tony Sheridan Trio, played in some of those gigs as well. I mean, it wasn't the same supporting acts right across the tour. The tour went on for quite a while. And the tour finished up in Bristol. Finished in Bristol, and Eddie Cochran wanted to get back to America. He'd been over for a while. So they organised a car for him to take him from the Hippodrome, I think it was, in Bristol to Heathrow to fly back to America. And he was travelling in the car with Karen Seeley, the songwriting girlfriend. And what happened when they were around Guildford area, the driver lost control. And I'm pretty sure the driver's name was George Martin, believe it or not. And he lost control. They hit a tree, and Eddie Cochran, he was taken to hospital. And I think I'm not sure whether he was pronounced dead at the hospital, but he certainly died shortly after. They got him to hospital. But one of the young police cadets who attended that scene was Dave D of Dozy, Beaky, Mick and Titch fame.
Go away. Yeah, because he was a copper, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he was actually at the one of the first responders to that particular situation. I'll tell you what's interesting as well, and you see this with most of the 50s American artists, Buddy Holly, Eddie Cochran. If you look at the Billboard Top 40, you can get a book of these things. And if you look at the Guinness Book Hit Records, Virgin Book, whatever, for the UK, by and large, most of the American artists, when they died, that was the end of their hit records. They didn't really carry on much after their death. But in the UK, they had a lot more hits. Certainly Eddie Cochran and Buddy Holly had a lot more British hits after they died than in America. And I always thought that was quite interesting. Life might be a little more fleeting in America, perhaps.
Well, the Vase of Flowers says Dave Davis hit Mick Avery with a cymbal. He was the drummer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So that's when I asked, didn't I? Yeah. Cymbals are dangerous.
Oh, yeah, I think it's happened a few times. I'm pretty sure that The Who used to have on-stage bust-ups. I mean, Roger Daltrey was a bit of a bruiser, I think, really, in his past. And, they had altercations on the stage. And I think he got himself rather badly cut once when Mooney threw a cymbal in his general direction. He actually gave himself a hernia at one gig, Keith Moon. You know, he famously destroyed the drum kit at the end, and he got a little bit over enthusiastic destroying the bass drum, and he ended up in hospital.
Yeah, when we were talking, that's a cracking quote here. Comments when we were talking about freedom of speech, and he has the knowledge, but it's judgment neutral. That's the issue with academia. You can only advance by swallowing the accepted script, and that's what it's all about. It's script.
That's the problem.
Script writing.
If you're not reading off the same page, you're not going anywhere.
No, and John, how about this for a name? John, the Midnight Toker, and he says the CIA broke up the hippie movement.
Oh, certainly. It was essentially anti-establishment, which is why they were involved with it. It's worth actually did a little bit of thought to the hippie side, and just in a couple of minutes, it's interesting to note that 1967 was really the height of the hippie movement. There was a thing called the powwow, a gathering of the tribes for a human being. And that had people like Allen Ginsberg, Timothy Leary, Jerry Rubin, who was a real big counterculture figure, rock bands like the Grateful Dead. And that was a sort of celebration at the beginning of the year, on a mountaintop overlooking Haight-Ashbury. Haight-Ashbury, of course, became the epicenter for hippiedom. And then if you go on to the 6th of October, 1967, you had the Death of Hippie March. The residents of Haight-Ashbury actually organised this march because they believed, the hippie movement started with high ideals, but they believed it had become polluted by outsiders. So they sort of arranged a mock funeral. And you see photographs of this. They're carrying a coffin with this imaginary character called Hippie in the coffin. And basically 1967, it's the birth of psychedelia. It's the birth of or the early days of rock music, and the whole hippie ideals had now become big business. So they were taken over by the big business characters. And a couple of interesting sort of comments. I mean, Frank Zappa very much satirized American society, and I think it's in Who Needs the Police Call. There's a line that goes something or other, where all the phony hippies meet. And I think what had happened is that now, instead of, I remember Zappa again commenting about record industry moguls, the old boys in the dark grey suits, and they'd say, well, they didn't be, probably because they didn't really understand the music, they'd take a chance on people. So, people would be allowed to have 3 or 4 hit singles, a failed album, and still they put more stuff out. Then the young hip, which is probably where the word hippie comes from, capitalists, they became not capitalists, they're record producers, record industry moguls, because they thought they understood the music as better than the kids. Zappa commented that it was so much harder to get record deals, and I think there's a lot of truth in that as well. And Don Henley in 1985, he had a song called "Boys of Summer," and he makes this wonderful observation: out on the road today, I saw a Deadhead sticker on a Cadillac, and interesting.
Well, what about? I don't want to get into this, but you can tell me something here. I really don't want to get into the punk. I didn't like the punk era, I'm being honest.
Me too.
But when Johnny Rotten, when he started singing about God Save the Queen, put it that way, God Save the Queen, and everybody was outraged about it, and they were. Any sort of thing about, you mentioned the establishment, people become outraged, yet the same establishment in this country cover up lots. Don't they, Anthony? They just cover up and tell you lies.
What's the line? As soon as you're born, they make you feel small. Yeah. Give you no time to save it all, and then we go on. It's that is kind of the basic criticism of it. But I must say that there have been figures of establishment, and I'm not quite including George Martin in that, but he certainly was not from a lowly background, a working class background like the Beatles. So it's occasionally you have that input musically, I'm talking about, not outside of the nucleus of the music. And there's a wonderful chap that I would love to talk to you about one night if Frank is agreeable. A guy called John Hammond from America, who was a music producer, who made it his business, coming from money and establishment, a very, very, very wealthy background. He wanted to sink his money into discovering music that people hadn't heard. So
would you be willing to talk to Anthony about that?
Well,
yeah, absolutely. John Hammond, he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as being a pretty important guy. But he's the guy that signed Bob Dylan to Columbia Records. What happened was Bob Dylan was playing harmonica on, I can't remember, somebody else's record. Hammond liked him, brought him back in and signed him. And Bob Dylan's first album at the beginning sold nothing at all. And Bob Dylan became known as Hammond's Folly.
I love that album. No, I love it.
It's a brilliant album. Just ahead of its time.
But you know what? He is remarkably interesting to me because he went against the grain. And he's almost like a Jürgen Klopp of music, in that he saw something he liked and he thought people should hear that. I'm going to make it my business for people to hear that. And I know he tried for years and years and years to get Robert Johnson's product out there. And in the end, he did it after about 25 years. But Billie Holiday, Charlie Christian was one of his, and so on and so on. And he wasn't. The more I get to learn about him, the more I want to know about him. I'm currently painting the man now because of his links to all of the music that we talk about and we know and we take for granted today, which possibly wouldn't have happened without him. Bob Dylan. I think the last two big names he signed was Bruce Springsteen and a guy who I loved, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Double Trouble, and that was 86, I think. And then he died, but wow, just one of those people, like George Martin. You open one door, another one opens, and it's like goes on. Thank God for them.
Absolutely. I once heard Frank Zappa comment on Stevie Ray Martin. It was a live album, and he was introducing, this is Stevie Ray Martin. He's a guitarist. He plays all the complicated bits.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's been great tonight, and I've been looking at these, some of the comments, and I think they've all enjoyed it, because what the content today with music as well, it's been absolutely wonderful. And I'm going to leave you with a quote. Remember, like freedom of speech and all this and whatever, right? And about wars and about everything.
That's what music's about.
Yeah, of course it is. Well, we always had. What did we call the three? What was it? What was it called? It wasn't a triangle. It was very similar to the sign of the cross or whatever. You had the music, you had the patriotism, and you had the soldiers. I forget what it was called. And they all went to war. It's like the very opening of Anthem. Think about this title, Anthem for Doomed Youth. And that was Wilfred Owen. Anthem for Doomed Youth. And it was about war, lads going to war. And the opening line of that is, "What passing bells for these who die as cattle." Think about that. What passing bells for these who die as cattle. And this is what it's all about. And it's all about misinformation, disinformation. It's about propaganda. And this is what we're experiencing today. And Leo Tolstoy, the great, War and Peace, remember what he wrote? Absolutely brilliant. And he said, the truth would be a wonderful thing if it was true.
Exactly. There is no truth. It's interpretive. Life is just completely interpretive. I think that really lies at the heart of the problem. Kurosawa did this film called Rashomon, and what it is, I think it was a fight or something like that. That is sort of 4 to 5. I haven't seen it for a long, long time, but it's sort of a fight or something between a couple of characters, and then it retakes that 15 minutes 5 times with how each person saw that and how each person interpreted that. And I think that's at the heart of a lot of all this, is why, you can't, it's not possible to get complete harmony, except in, anarchical syndicalism or something with, very, very small groups, when you can please everybody all the time, in a sense. But when you start, we've got a planet of just over 8 billion people. It's a lot of points of view.
Well, when you're on again, you and Anthony are going to talk about that John Hammond, aren't you?
John Hammond, yeah.
Right. Can you incorporate this? Because I think it resonates with what we're talking about, to be honest. It's his music, by the way. And it's 3 songs, right? One is Give Peace a Chance. The other, All You Need Is Love. And the final one, the third one, because Anthony will know all these as well, is Imagine. Would you talk about them, talk about the lyrics, talk about what was in the minds of John writing Imagine? What was in the minds of Paul and John writing All You Need Is Love and Give Peace a Chance? What was going on at the time? Was your mind talking about that the next time?
No, it sounds like a interesting, fun topic.
I'm glad you said fun. But it'll be interesting. It'll be historical.
Yeah.
Derek, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and I can't wait for this John Hammond, you and Anthony chatting about him, and maybe Kenneth in as well.
A name amongst the mix, it's. I'm fascinated with everything you brought up, Derek. I really am.
Oh, thanks.
I think everyone on the planet, is music has got such an impact to their lives. And for me, being a little Scouse anorak, music has been from day one right the way through.
Scouse anorak, I haven't heard that for years. I always someone said to me that I was an odd bod because I used to read poetry.
I'll go for that,
I honestly, I used to read poetry and love poetry. I do love it. And I write it. I actually write poetry. But anyway, I just want to thank you, Derek. I might send you this poem, by the way.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks.
And see, when you're on a game with Anthony, you can say no, don't bother about.
We'll all sing it.
I'll just mime along.
You play the drums.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. We can get Billy Kinsley to sing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, lads, it's been absolutely wonderful. I've got to thank you, Derek, for coming on tonight. I can't wait for your conversation with Anthony. And I've got to thank Anthony for coming on tonight. I'll be giving you the ring during the week, Anthony. Oh, I've got to I forgot all about this. Hang on a minute. I hope he's added it. Oh, he hasn't added it. There's your book there.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, Record Collector reviewed it and they liked it.
Yeah, you know what? Listen, people, get this. It's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Honestly, if you want to know about like any band or whatever, just and as Derek says, you don't start from the beginning. You can dip in anywhere and find something of interest. You really can. And I've just got to thank Derek for coming in tonight. I've got to thank my friend Anthony for coming in tonight. And others I wanted to put up. I'm giving a talk on at Billinge on Friday, and the Billinge talk is about Jack the Ripper.
Oh wow!
It's about Jack the Ripper, and I've said to people, "Oh yeah, I love Jason, I really do." And if he was a woman, I think I'd marry him. And there it is, people. It's St. Mary's Club, Billinge, Friday the 1st, on the 2024. Doors open 7:30. An evening with local historian Professor Frank Carlyle. Jack the Ripper, the real story. The real story. Now,
going to give us a spoiler now, are you, Frank?
I'll say this. I'll say this, honestly, and I mean this. I really mean this. Without spoiling anything, right? And I'm going to ask you first, Terry. You first. Do you think that Jack the Ripper is still anonymous today? Yes or no?
I think he probably is. I mean, there are lots of different stories and books about who's done it. But my money would be on there's still probably a lot of questions to ask.
Okay. Anthony, do you think he's anonymous, just like what Derek said with his answer?
No, I think we know him with the information, but I think it's clouded again with what Derek said because there's so many books.
It's only what the lads have been saying tonight. It's only what the lads have been saying tonight, right? And there it is. Jack the Ripper is known. And if anyone would like to go along to me tour, I'll let you know who it is, why it is, and why they keep the wraps upon them. Okay? Hang on a minute, people. Just a second. Right. And for all you Liverpool fans, Xabi Alonso is coming to Liverpool. That's concrete. I told you that, though, didn't I? I told you a couple of weeks ago that it was nailed on. And that was from a great source of mine. That was the message there that I got. Anyway, I'd just like to thank Derek once again. Thank you. Can't wait for you and Anthony to talk about this John Hammond. And I'm just going to listen. And for all you football fans, tomorrow evening, starting at 8, it's the Frank Carlyle podcast about Liverpool Football Club and everything else. You've got to tune in. If you're a Liverpool fan, you've got to tune in because I think we won some sort of cup yesterday, didn't we? So tune in, and it'll be a great show. I'll have my usual guests on, and they'll be cock-a-hoop talking about and this message that I've just got in about Xabi Alonso. We'll be talking about the Sheffield's Wednesday game on Wednesday. I'll be going with my daughter Francine and my little granddaughter Sophie. And I've just got, as I said, these two fantastic gentlemen, my great friends Anthony Brown, the great artist, and also the wonderful Derek Shelmerdine. And I've got to thank Gap Painting Services for sponsoring the Frank Carlyle Show. If you're an NHS worker, if you're an OAP, fantastic discounts. Get them in. They're clean, tidy, fully time served, and also fully insured. Please get them in. They're well worth it. And I'm not just saying that because they sponsor me. I'm really not. The first class. And also, all you out there, every single one of you lads and girls, like Norman, Carl Perkins was great.
Yeah.
Does he wear a wig? Does he wear to Carl? Does he? I've got to know that. Does he wear a wig, Jerry?
Carl Perkins?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware he would. He might well have done. He certainly did himself no harm with blue suede shoes.
That was unbelievable, though.
Yeah.
That was really unbelievable. Anyway, there's some. Do you know what? I'm sorry, boys and girls. I've got to go. I've got to go because Jason's grabbing me like this. The invisible hands is coming around. Exactly. One big hook. Anyway, see me tomorrow night on the Frank Carlyle Show, 8 o'clock. It'll be fantastic. We'll all be chatting. Join me next week with the History Show. Join me again when Derek is on again talking about this John Hammond. That's resonating with me, that John Hammond. I can't wait till I listen to it about those three, please, Derek, those three songs.
Absolutely.
Okay. It's been a wonderful show. Without you people, without Jason, there wouldn't be a Frank Carlyle Show simply because I'm hopeless at getting things done, fitting things around and everything else, and getting the guests. So there'd be no show without him, but there wouldn't be a show, to be honest, without you people out there. Thank you so much. And I will be giving you the ring, Anthony, during the week. Is that okay?
That's brilliant. That's great. Derek, it's been a pleasure. Thank you tonight.
I really enjoyed it. A fabulous conversation. Wow, we've covered some ground.
We have, haven't we? And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it.
I love that. Do you know, Frank, I came on one of these shows a while ago, and we didn't actually get to the topic I'd researched for that show. We didn't actually get into any of it. It's brilliant. That's what I love. You just never know where the conversation's going, and it's so much fun.
Yes,
we could have exchanged scripts and say, "Well, you're going to say that, and then I'll say that." It doesn't make sense to me. But listen, great work you've taken us through that, and my mind's whirring with all sorts of things. Like, I'm sure everyone else is the same.
Yeah, of course, because they all, the joins in. They're coming up with some the Young Marble Giants. Never heard of them. Never heard of the Young Marble Giants. So all these. I
don't really know anything past 1980. I kind of stopped at 1976 or whatever. And then
my thing stopped with the Beatles, to be honest.
Yeah. The Beatles, Jimi Hendrix going, and then it's like...
Yeah, well, the 60s, the flower power, absolutely amazing. And Scott McKenzie. Who can forget Scott McKenzie?
Is that Philip Wallach, Blondheim III we're talking about?
That was my mum's favourite record, and I never got away from it. From, 1970, 67 did it come out? 66, 67, forever.
So, my proper name is Brad Pitt. But, you know, I thought,
That's
no,
so
that won't catch on.
Yeah.
Anyway, boys, thank you so much. Thank you out there for joining me tonight. Hope to see all the football fans tomorrow. It'll be a fantastic show. And we'll be okay. And next Monday, as I said, a full history show with some interesting stuff. Thank you so much. And DW, I'll be seeing you on those streams, my friend. Okay, thank you so much. And as the Italians would say, ci vediamo. Buonanotte. Ciao, Bella.
Ciao, Bella.
Cheers.
Cheers, Jace.